Okay, this is another piece that I worked on. Didn't spend very long on it, and I actually intentionally left some things unfinished so that I would remember to talk about them, weirdly enough, um, because I knew that if I implemented some things and they just were there, that I would forget to specifically mention them. Like, and you'll see this with the flashlight. Um, but one of the things I was doing was just playing around with different assets that I have. So, and it actually, for better or for worse, looks a little bit brighter on the recording. Um, but you can see the ceilings, the walls are actually a Megascan asset that I have, a Quixel Megascan. Same with the floor texture. Um, One thing I would want to change is the tiling. You can see the tiling on the walls, and I'd have to go in and fix that. But it changes based on the length of the wall, how much it tiles. So the different walls tile differently. So I'd have to go in for each specific wall and create a material instance so that it tiles correctly. And I just didn't feel like doing that because this isn't meant to be like a full feature complete project. Um, this is pretty minimalist, so you can WASD to move around, and left click is to interact. So this flashlight, as you pick it up, and then right click is to activate and deactivate your flashlight. One of the things I wanted to do with that flashlight, I managed to pick it up pretty quickly, but sometimes I have a lot of issues picking it up because you have to be looking right at it, but there's no UI indicator for the center of your crosshair, or like there's no crosshair, so where the center of your screen is. So you just kind of have to approximate where your center is. So one thing I want to do is add a sphere collision to the flashlight so that it just gives it a larger area for me to be able to click on, instead of having to be specifically over the mesh itself. Um, and one of the things that I was doing with this is playing around with public variables. So this door is actually locked until you pick up the flashlight, but then you can open it. And we'll see if my recording crashes when I do this. Um, but I actually want to make this nighttime. Come back in. No. Let's see if it... oh, there it is. So we can see, I'm clicking on the door, nothing's happening. Click on the flashlight, pick it up, now the door opens. So I was playing around with public variables and being able to set specific instances of things to work with specific instances of things, such as like a light switch working for specific lights, because I hadn't really played around with public variables before. This project is not going to be available for download just because it's a very large file size, and it's very unoptimized right now. I have there's some quick optimization I could do that I haven't, but I would need to go through and I'd want to optimize it some and try and reduce that file size so that it would run better and be easier to download. And then we've got this little person here. It might be hard to see, but she is actually in an idle animation, so she is kind of moving, just breathing, her shoulders lifting, and she's gonna disappear. There's nothing in this room really. I didn't implement a whole lot of stuff. I was going to implement some puzzles and things to figure out. I just didn't get around to it, because that would have required like new mechanics and things, and I just decided it wasn't really that important at the time. Yeah, and you can see texture streaming pool over budget, so I got to optimize this quite substantially. Oops. Forgot I did that, where the door automatically opens. Scared myself. One thing I want to point out, this is not something I specifically did, but it just amazes me, is, so this is Unreal Engine 5.1, which now has accurate, volumetric reflections. So you can see the wall reflected in this fridge here. If we move around to the front of the fridge, you can kind of see, it's hard because the lighting is very dim, but you can see the table and chairs reflected just a little bit. If we back up, it's a little bit easier to see. You know, in the sink here, you can see the backsplash reflected. So that's just, I didn't do anything for that. I just, you know, all I did was put this light on the ceiling, and it just does that. The materials are already reflective because they're metallic, so it's, it just creates that effect. But it blows me away. Like, I already knew that it could do that, but just seeing it in action in something I built is just, like, amazing to me. That I can get reflections that look that good without putting any effort into it. So this door was intended to be locked behind a puzzle that was going to be like some kind of puzzle box that was going to be on the table here, but it wasn't. And then there's going to be a puzzle in here. There's not a whole lot to talk about, really. This is pretty small, and it was meant to be just a short little horror thing. You can also see on it says preview all over the place. That's the lighting. Again, I'd have to like mess with the lighting. It's to get it to be finalized and whatnot. So that's why it says preview, is just because the lighting is not in its final, is not fully implemented. So these guys, there's a little bit to talk about. I think it looks okay, but it could look better. I mean, it's kind of creepy when you walk in here and you see all these guys with their heads going nuts. If you actually pay attention, you can see they're moving quite fast. They're heaving in and out. That's because I went through their idle animation and I keyed in their head movements. But then when I played it, I wasn't very happy with the speed of the head movements. So then I went in and I sped up the overall animation to like 3 or 4 or maybe even 5 times. So it's the same like 3-second idle loop now in the span of, you know, 3/4 of a second. So that's why they look like they're heaving so fast, is because it's their 3-second idle. It's that same idle animation that the other character was using, but it's just sped way the hell up. So if I was going to go back, one thing I would do is just rekey the head animation so that it's as fast as I want it without having to speed up the overall animation, so that their idle animation is real slow, but their heads are jittery all over the place. Another thing I was trying to figure out how to do, but I couldn't quite remember how to do it without looking up tutorials. But if you notice, with all these guys, their heads are all moving at the same place. So they're all at the same place in the animation. What I was trying to figure out how to do was to randomize it. So I figured out how to put it so that they start at a random point in the animation, but it put them all at that same point. So every time I hit, you know, play on the editor, it would put them at a random point in the animation, but they're all synchronized to that same random point. What I was trying to figure out how to do was to randomize it per instance, and I couldn't figure out how to do that because I don't quite remember how to. I know I've seen that it's possible, I just don't remember how it's done. But I want to do that because it doesn't look terrible now, but if you're looking at it, it is kind of weird that their heads are all completely synchronized and they're all kind of like bouncing together. So I would want to have it randomized so it's staggered, and it's a small visual thing, but it would be something I would like to add that I think would add to the overall visual, the impact. And then coming through here, there's a guy who's just in his idle animation, or his default A pose, not even an animation, that I was going to have a cutscene here once the player figured out how to unlock this door. But I had a deadline for myself and I ran out of time. So that's all. Not too much to talk about, but just something else I worked on. and thought it would be interesting to share. So thank you for watching if you did, and I hope that you enjoyed it.